Well, hello, Perennial Pride listeners. Thanks for joining me today. I have a very special guest. I think you're going to get a lot of great insights and information from my guest, Alessandra Messineo Long, who is the principal at her own firm, the law offices of Alessandra Messineo Long. She works in the area of estate planning. She supports corporations. She does a lot of different things. But today we're going to have her share her wisdom around a topic that is certainly near and dear to my heart. You know, it's a topic that I think a lot of people shy away from. It's potentially uncomfortable. But, you know, again, just with a lot of things in life, we have to face some of these uncomfortable topics so we can create the outcomes we really want. So, Alessandra, really thank you for joining me today and appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much, Tom, for having me. It's a pleasure. You know how passionate I am about this topic and about everyone putting their affairs in order. So I'm happy to talk about it with you.
Yeah, you know, it's quite amazing. I mean, I know we've known each other for a little while now, and you know, children kind of in the same world, and I sometimes watch them and I say they take forever to do anything, right? Say the homework, they do it to the last minute. And they take all the time in the world. And, you know, sometimes I think about estate planning. I think a lot of people feel like they have like forever to do it. And so they never get to it. You know, in your world, why don't we start there and just chat about kind of your experiences with estate planning and this topic, and why maybe some people just never really get to doing it and spend time putting it in place.
Well, I think there are lots of considerations and why people don't put it in place. But I think it's, you know, on a lot of people's to-do list, but we know how things on the to-do list just kind of stay there when they don't feel that they're urgent, right? So like if there's not a crisis, if they don't feel an urgency, they don't think they're going to die tomorrow, and hopefully they're not, but they just avoid, you know, it can be an unpleasant topic for people in the sense of, you know, thinking about their demise, right? And them not being no longer in this world. So a lot of people try to, you know, avoid that. But as we know, like the best situation is to put your documents and your estate plan in place so that hopefully nothing does happen to you for a long time and you're not working and dealing with it when there is a crisis, because then the stress is so much more elevated. Whereas when you do it on your own timeline, when everybody's healthy, when everybody's doing well, maybe you don't think it's so important, but it is very important to have your documents and your estate plan in place, because, you know, I think you don't know what you don't know, right? And people don't realize the repercussions of not having a will in place and not having a power of attorney in place or healthcare documents for themselves as adults, or their children who turn 18 and they don't have the certain documents in place that they need to have in place, you know, or their elderly parents don't have them in place because they've never had these discussions. Then they're holding the bag when something goes wrong, or God forbid somebody passes away. And, you know, if only they would have taken care of it ahead of time, things would go so much smoother, be so much more inexpensive to deal with, and have so much less of a headache.
Yeah, I know. And that's what I think I hear a lot from certain people who I come across is maybe they don't feel like they have enough wealth, or, you know, it's just for the wealthy, right, to have these fancy estate plans and trusts in place. You know, I'm just kind of a normal person. I don't need any of this stuff. But you kind of just touched on, so, you know, even if you don't have a lot of assets today, there are many aspects around estate planning that don't touch on just a transfer of wealth, but, you know, provide you living benefits. Can you talk more about some of those things? I know you mentioned a few of them around the healthcare proxies and, you know, things that even our college age kids need to be leery of.
You know, listen, I do say anyone over 18 should have a will, especially if you have any assets to your name, right? But it is lesser important to have a will if you don't have any assets solely in your name, right? But what is very important for sure from the point you are 18, speaking of our children, is to have, a healthcare proxy, a living will, a durable power of attorney, and something that I call an authorization of medical records. You can also call it a HIPAA, authorization, which, most people are familiar with. But I think every adult, including our young adult children, need to have those in place, because once you are an adult, no one is, supposed to be making decisions or controlling our money for us if we can't for ourselves, unless we give them the permission to. So, and no one should be making healthcare decisions for ourselves unless we give them the permission to. So while, spouses do generally get the courtesy when you're in the hospital and a spouse goes into a hospital, you usually can speak on behalf of your spouse. However, if you're unmarried, if you're single, if you're young, and even when you are married, it's a heck of a lot easier if you have these documents in place and you can be like, hey, here's my healthcare proxy. Here's my living will. These are my wishes. The person who speaks for me, if I can't speak for myself, if I've gotten in an accident or I'm ill and I can't, I'm on morphine or whatever the case may be, is my husband or is my partner or is my adult child that can speak for me or my parent. So, it's better to name your agents, have it written down in a legal document who can speak for you and make healthcare decisions for you. And then if that person is unavailable, name a substitute person to be able to do that. Because without that, because of the laws that are in place, doctors can't share your information with your loved ones, can't, do certain things because you haven't given them permission to. And sometimes it's too late if you're, unconscious or in a coma or in, under excessive drugs to be able, you won't have the ability to give that permission. So you want the people who you name to make healthcare decisions for you, not just, whoever. So, or have the doctors do it on their own.
And that's to your point, whether it's financial or healthcare decisions. You're making it clear who would you want to speak on your behalf, right? Those are just simple things, seemingly simple things, but who would you trust with that? And so that's why it's so important to have some of this stuff documented, because they may not be able to, to your point, may not be able to follow everything that you would want them to follow, and have the person that you feel most comfortable to make the decisions for you be that voice. And similar with their, I think of it certainly with young kids. Our kids are still minors. So, having it in writing, like who would I want to be a parent if I were not able to do it? To be able to take care of my kids in the way that I would want, I'd rather have that decision versus the state deciding.
Oh yeah, now you're getting into
right, that's what would happen, right?
In the will and guardianship and successor custodians and things like that. So, with regards to guardianship and, successor custodians on custodial accounts, those things, are so important for parents to put in place. That's the single most important for any parent to put a will in place, whether you have assets or not. If you are a parent, you should have a will, and whether you need a will or whether you need a type of will that pours over into a revocable trust so that you can have somebody on an ongoing basis, if something happens to you, manage your children's affairs, at least until they're of age or until they're of certain ages. It is so incredibly crucial because you want to be making those decisions and you don't want the court to have, deciding who then takes care of your kids, or the state taking care, saying who takes care of your kids if you are no longer around, and who's managing your kids' money. and have that individual have to go to court and be named, and then have to then account to the court on every single year for every single dime that is spent on that child until age of majority. That's expensive. It's time consuming. It's grueling. And, that's really the last thing any parent, I think, would want if they can't be there raising their own child. So the next best thing is to obviously create a will and create a revocable trust so that you can make these decisions for your family as to who is the guardian, who is the trustee, who's the executor of your estate if something should happen to you. And then what does the trustee do, and what can the trustee do with the funds that are then left to taking care of your minor child? And what do you want those funds used for, and how do you want them distributed? Do you want them given to your child at age 18? Do you want them managed and, their health and their welfare and their education monitored for a certain period of time, and then them getting, payouts at certain ages, maybe 25 and 30 and 35, they would get then principal. And I'm not saying that that's for, just the wealthy. It's for whatever you have asset wise, and if you have a home and own real estate, have a car, if you have jewelry that you want to leave to certain people, any type of assets you may own that are not going via beneficiary, and you have, a beneficiary on your life insurance policy or your IRA or different things like that. And those obviously trumps the will. But it's so important because you want to be making those decisions yourself and not the state or the court.
Yeah, and this touches on things that we've talked about before. I mean, this is obviously the protective side of your financial life. Obviously, when you're getting into things around taking the role of a guardian, obviously goes beyond just financial things. But this is how you can transfer your assets and your wealth very efficiently to the next generation if something bad happened, right? Or when that happens, because unfortunately it will happen. So it just smooths it out, right? Because what happens if you don't have a will or a trust and anything set up? Like, it goes right through to the states, and that could take some time for some people.
Have to go through probate for the entire estate, and it takes a long time and it's expensive. Like probably the shortest probate is 12 months to a year and a half. And you do have to hire an attorney usually, because some people do attempt to try to do it themselves, but it's complicated, and the goal really is, it's kind of a fallacy that you don't go through probate at all if you have a will. You still go through probate if you have a will, to have the probate court acknowledge that it's a valid will and that your executor can then distribute your assets the way they should be distributed according to your will. But it's a much easier process if you have a will in place, because if not, then it goes by what's called the rules of intestacy, and then your heirs get whatever the state says they get, depending upon what state you live in. And if you have parents still alive, it straight goes up to your parents. If you have children, it goes to your children. But it takes time, and especially if you have minor children, then it's going to take a long time. Whereas if you put things in, do what I suggested before, a pour over will into a revocable trust, you can fund those trusts. And when I say fund, put things in the name of the trust during your lifetime. And you still have full control of what assets are in that trust. If you put the title of your house in the name of the revocable trust, you can still sell your house. You can still do whatever you want with your house. You're still the owner. You're still the trustee of your own trust. But if something should happen to you, you've named someone to be the successor trustee to then manage it for your children. You can put certain money market accounts, your individual savings account, your individual checking account into the name of the trust. So if something should happen to you, it's already in the trust. You don't have to go through the probate court. Your trustee, just by showing your death certificate to whatever organization or whatever bank has those assets, can then be named the successor trustee and then manage those funds for your successors. And deal with it. It's so much administratively easier than if it was caught up in the red tape of the probate court. And on that same note, you can make your revocable trust the, beneficiary of certain things, like, for example, life insurance. So it's good to have it in that sort of that type of documentation, even when you don't have a lot of money. And it's cheaper to actually do it when you're still alive, and then to manage it and do it as you grow and as you develop wealth, than to do it later on, because it simplifies things if you do it right from the beginning.
Right. Yeah, and to your point, and it makes it, certainly seems like it would make it a little bit more manageable to do it over time too, right? Especially if you've been super successful and now you have assets all over the place and you're trying to, fund your trust and get it all set up. That could require a lot of effort to do that, especially if you've built up a lot, right? So starting early can really give you an advantage to kind of build into it, right? And then you're preparing for the unfortunate, inevitable day we leave this earth. We graduate from this earth. And, then it gets our wealth to our families faster, more efficiently, right? And gives it access to them so they can use it faster, right? That's all the stuff that goes into the planning you help people with.
Yeah, and it also, by naming a trustee and creating a living trust for yourself, if something should happen to you, that trustee, like, not that you've passed away, but let's just say you're ill and you can't manage your affairs, but your assets are mostly all in the trust, then the trustee, the successor trustee, can then use their role as a successor trustee to take care of you. So, not only do you have to rely on a durable power of attorney, which the role of a durable power of attorney is naming someone to take care of your affairs, all different types of affairs, your business affairs, your taxes, anything that you can't take care of from a business financial standpoint, right? If you're incapacitated for a period of time while you're still alive, your agent can take care of for you. And you want to be able to name that person, right, to take care of it, whether it's your, a family member, a spouse, a partner, again, or an adult child. You want to name that person. So, rather than just relying on the durable power of attorney, the assets that are put in a revocable trust, if you have one, your trustee can manage those assets while you can't on your own. And then once you're fine and you're better, then you step back into doing everything yourself.
It's crazy. Yeah. So, there seems like a ton of benefit to doing a lot of this stuff and getting ahead of it, and it makes it simpler for your family. I kind of treat it almost like it's a gift to your family that you put these things together, right, to simplify it and have the most money transfer, right? Because like you said, you're going to have fees and, legal costs, whatever that kind of get, wrapped up in all of this process, because people got to process this through probate. So you can streamline it a bit. But, what I think about too, what most people would say to me that, I don't have a lot of wealth and this estate tax issue, which you hear a lot about, is only for super, super wealthy, right? They won't apply to me. But, that could always change, right? And that those exemptions do change, and there's threats of it, especially with how much indebtedness we have in this country and need for taxation. we can also leverage some of these sort of things to maybe pass money over without estate taxes, correct?
Sure, there are definitely different types of documents that different types of like, well, there's documents, there's trusts that can be created to transfer your wealth. You can also transfer your wealth by taking out life insurance, right? And taking whole life insurance and benefiting your family that way. So there are several different vehicles where you can begin to transfer some of your wealth and take advantage of, the gifting, the gifting tax provisions every year, and I always tell my clients, the best thing to do is have your attorney, your accountant, and your financial advisor, all working together to determine, okay, what is the best options for you given your current wealth and what we see what's in the future coming up, and how do we want to protect that wealth going to the next generation. And there are family trusts that can be created that you can still, they're usually irrevocable vehicles in order to protect them for the next generation. But you can fund them accordingly each year, however it suits your needs. And, and some of that, the income from those trusts can come back and still be used for the grantors, but, the principal stays in the trust and can be, for the beneficiaries of that trust. And, there are lots of different types of irrevocable trusts that can be created in order to transfer wealth. And, some have, more benefits than others. And, some of them, are pretty stringent. And it just depends upon, your level of comfort with giving, away your, assets on any given day, right? Any given year to benefit you from a tax perspective and to benefit your heirs. Life insurance, irrevocable life insurance trusts are a great vehicle because, especially term, because you don't get that money until you pass, right? So if you have very large life insurance policies on your life, if you put them in an irrevocable life insurance trust, that amount of life insurance will be taken out of your asset base and benefit your heirs. And they won't, be penalized with the estate tax on like a $2 million policy, $3 million, $4 million policy. And, you wouldn't have benefited from that term policy anyway until you pass and your heirs benefit for it. And so there's really no downside, I think, with regards to term. And then when using whole life insurance, if you want to put a whole life policy, a lot of people who are, coming up against the estate tax thresholds use life insurance to then transfer wealth to pay for the whole life policy, and then use that to build up wealth in that policy to then transfer on to their heirs.
Yeah, and that's a powerful. It's just like any financial tool that's around. They have all their strengths and weaknesses. One of the strengths is that to be able to pass it, or I know a lot of people are using it to for people who even have really sizable estates, use it to pay the estate tax on the other assets, so they don't have to sell them off or extinguish them like a business, right? You don't want to just sell your business because you have this massive estate tax problem now. So there's all hosts of things that can be sort of put together. And Alistair, I know this is a very complicated topic, but I know you kind of touched on it in general. That's why I need to talk to estate attorneys like Alessandra, because they can get complicated, but in the same respect, getting your team advisors together to sort of formulate the plan, to me is really the ultimate, because there's a lot of moving parts to some of these things, and it's good to get the expertise from a broad set of advisors. Kind of in my world, I see it all the time where everyone is they've got 5 to 7 advisors and they never talk to each other. So it's almost nearly impossible to come up with something that is the optimal solution because you got the client or person in the middle trying to figure it all out, and they're not equipped, right? It's difficult. So it's a really good point you made there.
One of the biggest things is communication. It's communication with your family. It's communication with your advisors. It's communication. So, really talking these things through with your family, discussing the issues, discussing, hey, we need to put these documents in place, and, we need to make a list of assets because if something happens to me, nobody knows where anything is. So, communication all around is really the key to all of this, and really just making the time to sit down and decide to do it. And I think, as an attorney myself, I pride myself in telling my clients, listen, most of the hard work is done by me. So, as long as you get me like all the information that I need, then I can guide you through the process. And, and then I also stress the fact that they, need to have conversations with their parents, with their elderly parents, with their children, with their guardians that they've named, with their successor trustees, with their successor executors as to, where everything is, what the priorities are, what the wishes are, and really have like full family discussions about these things.
Oh my God, that itself is gold because it's crazy to think there are people coming and have told me that say they have ailing parents and they have no idea what is coming. They don't know what their parents own. They don't know how to handle it. They don't talk about it. And it's just a sort of a product of kind of this taboo topic around money and, certainly estate planning, whatever it is, discomfort. And to me, it's like, it's just crazy. And, I take it to heart because I said, all the things we've talked about is preparing our wealth for our heirs. Like we want to minimize taxation. We want to make it simpler. But your point is, I think, even way more important is preparing our heirs for that wealth. Like, what are they going to use it for? How do you use it productively? Do you know where all the assets are and how we would wish you use it? So I think those conversations and communication are absolutely imperative to allow this transfer to happen in the most effective way. So they know what's coming and kind of what your wishes are. I mean, that's all part of it. It's the family part of it, but it kind of can get lost sometimes. And I hear it, I think, unfortunately, more often than not, where they're not having that kind of communication. So very key. Thank you for that. We're at the top of that, Harry, and I know I want to cut this short. We have many other topics and we're going to have you back on here, but, we covered a lot of different areas and topics in ground, but clearly an estate plan is a viable sort of need for people adults at all different ages here. And it doesn't even matter if you don't have assets. And so yet, and even if you build them, right, this is where it really comes into play. And the sooner the better. And to reach out to folks like Alessandra to get some help is key. So Alessandra, how is it best to sort of, for people who are interested in learning more and hearing from you, how best to reach out to you?
Sure. Either by phone or by email. My email is aml@amlonglaw.com. And my phone number is 203-249-3601, whatever their preference is. And I'm happy to schedule a call, a meeting, a Zoom call, whatever's easiest with their lives to discuss these topics, because there's, it's just so important, I think, for anyone and everyone to make things easier for everyone going forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, if family's important, this is a good place to start. And certainly I highly encourage you to reach out to Alessandra. She's a great resource and tremendous expert in the space, and she'll give you tremendous advice. So Alessandra, any last parting shots you want to share with our audience here that we haven't shared this far?
I think if there's there's nothing that you take from this. At the very least, look at all of your beneficiaries on anything and everything you own. Make sure you have the right people in place. Make sure that you put this on your to-do list and, make it a priority, especially in the new year in 2023. I think it's so important. And I would absolutely stress the fact of when minors become 18, putting their documents in place, because more often than not in this day and age, those documents have had to be used. And I've seen it with several of my clients. So I would urge that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Alessandra, for joining me. I always love your partnership and giving me a lot of things to think about. So I appreciate your joining us on this and sharing your wisdom with my audience. So thanks again, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
Thank you so much for having me, Tom. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.